This is the first ever show where we'll be talking about pigs and banks and debanking and narratives and rates and people jostling for position, people shorting stuff, people trying to corner the market. It is a very bizarre time, and there are 20, let's call them conspiracy theories out there as to exactly what's going on. We're going to lay them all out and try to get to the bottom of exactly what happened over the last 6 weeks, because invariably what I've learned in life, there's always what I call connective tissue between events. There's no such thing as coincidence, and everything is connected. So we're going to try with this panel here, get to the bottom of what's going on. But before we jump in, links below for this team, all legends. Everybody is different. What makes the show special? We all have very different opinions that we share openly and honestly, so you can all make your own decisions. CTO, how are you in the darkness?
I'm good. I am good. I'm good. Be an interesting week, I think.
Yeah, very strange. Marty, Satoshi.
Good, very good. Obviously, on the spaces over the weekend, a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of narratives. You know, everyone's looking for a reason why. And so just trying to keep the boat level and let people understand that this is perfectly normal. But a stressful time for people. I mean, for me, I'm pretty used to it. The 30 to 35% pullback, obviously it was going to come. The reasons why, there's always 100 reasons. But at the end of the day, you know, we build up from here. The longs are cleared.
Yeah, and we'll talk about kind of the state of Bitcoin and where we are. Is the bottom in? Was it in? Etc. We'll look at some on-chain data. And Mando, how are you, kind sir?
I'm doing good. I'm moving house today, so I'm sorry if the audio isn't so good. But yeah, I've had a bit of a quieter week, I would say. Like there was nothing that really made me want to jump back in as much to the market. So it's been a quieter one.
And I want to thank Mando for being here, because I know moving house on the day of moving house is a very stressful time. So consider this your union tea break, okay? So as we jump in, all right, we're going to, this is going to be a very different story, because we're going to talk about the battle and what's happening. But before we go in, this is kind of a little bit of a state of the union, some very good information from James Check. Basically, he believes the sentiment was washed out when we fell down to 80K. And there's a very clear bottom formation. And I'd like people to throw rocks at this if you don't believe. We had the biggest historic holder rotation ever in the history of Bitcoin. The true market mean right now is 82,000, okay, which is the global cost basis. And what he means by that is anything below that is extreme value, because everybody's cost basis is now, the average cost base of Bitcoin is 82%, which means a huge percentage of Bitcoin has actually changed hands at these very high levels, which is also historic and very bizarre. And now everybody is vying. We're going to dig into, you know, there's a lot of people who are late to the Bitcoin party, and now they want to have a piece of it. And the way they get a piece of it is to drive the price down. You know, the wholesalers and the big players, they don't want to pay retail. They want to get super discount based on prices. Maybe that's a big part of what's going on as well. And we got sovereigns, and we got banks, and we got big scale buyers, all part of it. Not just the old whales selling, but also a lot of change happening. And the final point is Bitcoin now is like a global liquidity index, and liquidity has been extremely tight for a long time. There's now an 80% chance of rate cut in 16 days, which is good. QT is ending, if it hasn't ended already, in 6 days, and that means QE begins. So, first of all, let's talk about this list. People want to know, are we in a bear market? Does Bitcoin go below 80K? If it does, it could hit. I always said if there is a bear market, we go back to 70K, which is the price before the US election. Correct. A year ago. Who wants to have at this first?
I have a chart as usual, if you want to. Yes. If we should start there.
Let's pull that up. And let me pop. I'll put us in the bottom so we see the full chart.
Exactly. You can see it here. So I think, of course, there's been a lot of negative signs here for quite a while. We had the trend turn down about a month ago, and we've had like what feels like nothing but downwards movement. But if we zoom in a little bit here, I want to draw your attention to two things. One is that there's a pretty long wick down here. That means that there was buying interest there and price shot back up. The second thing is the volume bar here, if you look at the bottom. So the volume was really big on Friday. And when there is a volume peak like this, not always, but many times, it's either a starting volume of something or a stopping volume, meaning that I think it's at least possible that we have some sort of rally from here, because we never know for sure. The only thing we can say with certainty is that someone has been selling more than they were buying. That's the only thing we can say with certainty. We don't know how much they have left to sell. We don't know if they are finished, but there was a peak selling here last Friday, which also resulted in this rather big week. We can also see that the drop has been significant. This is 36%, I think, from top to bottom. So if we, our theory has been a little bit that perhaps with institutions, maybe it doesn't get quite as wild as in the past. In the past, the bear markets were 85% or 80%. Perhaps it will only be 50% now. In that case, that's already quite a distance. Like 36% out of 50 is, what, 2/3 or something like that. So I think that this isn't really the time to start flipping bearish here. If anything, there are some signs that perhaps there's a bounce here. Of course, again, we don't know, so don't go now and take your whole remaining bag and 100x long it, because no one knows in reality what's going. But I think there is the first slightly positive signs we've seen in a while. And that's what I can see in the chart here.
Let's talk about that $82,000 cost basis. That is historically considered a floor. Do you see any confluence of signs around that 82,000 level? I know we dipped to 80K.
Yeah. So I mean, we did have some support back in the spring, in February, March, April, around the same area. If you look like horizontally here, it did kind of go a little bit lower, but then it did come back. So clearly there was support around here. It's hard to say that exactly 80K, except the bounce that we had. But the bigger support is perhaps slightly lower than that. So I think we can't really say for sure, but there definitely has been support around this region, 73 maybe up to 80 in the past. And then, of course, we never know. It could also be that it continues down. And I think that a lot of people will say here that this is useless information. It could go up or it could go down. But I've heard someone, I can't remember who said it, but one of the big fund manager who said, like, if you're playing golf, if you can see the ball, you take a big swing at it. If you can't really see the ball, don't swing big. Don't take out like the one wood and swing if you can't really see the ball. And I think that there is a period of uncertainty here. And one way to manage that uncertainty is to have less position size. You don't need to have like all your money betting left or right. Like, it's fine to take it a little bit easy until the grass clears and you can see the ball again.
Okay, I think you mean the fairway before hitting the ball. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
or not the ball?
I think he meant to say, like, if the ball is hidden in the grass somewhere, you can't really see it. You don't take out the biggest club and swing big. You play a little carefully, perhaps. And he meant that if it was an analogy, like if the market is clear, it's very clear that the trend is up, it's nothing but strength, everything is pointing in one direction. Okay, then you go big, you go early, like you always say, James. While when there is a period of uncertainty, in reality, we have no idea what's going on right now. Okay, perhaps we don't need to take all our money and bet it in either direction. It's fine to bet with less and take it a little bit easy. I think that was a good advice for these times.
And Mando, what do you think about the theory that, at least from James Check, that the rotation is complete, the bottom is in, and now we have a new secular trend beginning for 2026? He is extremely bullish. And I would like to add, back when Bitcoin was like 80K last time around, he was extremely bearish, and then it shot up, and the higher it went, he got more and more bullish. And now, you know, he's probably one of the top on-chain analysts, I believe. What do you think of that theory?
I actually more agree with what CTO just said. I think right now, after we broke some of those longer-term trend indicators, the biggest one is that we just closed the second week under the 50-week moving average, which has generally been a sign of us shifting into more of a bear cycle. I think you can wait to see. This does feel like the first formation of a bottom, let's say around 80. And as CTO said, there was a large amount of volume that went through both on-chain, and also we saw a huge amount of volume go through IBIT on Friday. IBIT even had inflows on Friday, which kind of says a lot. It makes me think that 80 is going to be defended. The realized price, which you brought up as well, is quite an important one. We normally do bounce when we touch around that sort of level. So it makes you feel like Bitcoin's probably got at least going to form a bottom around there. I don't think it's going to be V-shaped, though. Like, for me, I feel like now we're going to have to work out if that is a strong enough bottom. We'll probably test it at least once more, and then go from there.
And a good point regarding the ETF flows. They were positive on Friday. $250 million came in, which is pretty substantial, and a big chunk of that into players like Fidelity.
Yeah, I thought that was important. Yeah. I thought that was important. I saw that and I was like, "What?" This is kind of what I was saying. Maybe it was a few weeks back that like TradFi generally buys dips, like at least retail does. So it was good to see that. You know, it was good to see that it wasn't a panic, even with huge liquidations, that people came in to buy it. So made me think it was a stronger dip than.
It's interesting because a lot of this is a point I'd like to ask you, Mando, and dig into it. And Marty, if you have any thoughts, the ETFs, about 30 to 40% of the ETF action is driven by hedge funds for the so-called carry trade. The other 60%, call it, is people allocating to funds, pension funds, etc., just perpetual bid coming in every week. But sometimes when the Bitcoin price tanks, the ETFs or the hedge funds dump. And we saw that the price had completely tanked and they sold nearly $1 billion a week ago. So TradFi sells the dips and then waits for things to stop and then they buy them back again. Did you ever see that pattern? So they do panic sell sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's trading.
Yeah. So
yep. They're traders. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I don't think this is anything we haven't seen before, guys. I mean, there's at least 10 narratives floating around X, which, you know, this just comes from fearful people. Very little evidence of anything really being the reason. The most clear evidence to me is that, first of all, we pulled down literally 35%, which is, if you know, I mean, the Raoul Powell thesis, we should have expected the 35% drawdown. It happens every time before liquidity injection. It also flushed Binance's order book entirely, almost to the dollar, and was 50% from the 6th of September 2024 to the all-time high on 7th of October 2025. 83,800 with a little panic selling went down to 80. I think it's a normal 50% daily pullback. You can make up 1,000 narratives. The problem with human beings is, you know, you've got the Benjamin Cowan, you know, disciples, which are whales. Let's give them credit. They're big holders, you know, and when the 50-week moving average drops below, you know, below the trend line, they sell. They stable out. They're not selling because they don't believe in Bitcoin. They sell because they want to buy back lower. Okay. So I think there was a lot of stabling out. Then you've got the Raoul Powell disciples, et cetera, et cetera. So it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So no doubt there were a lot of reasons for selling. I'm not going to argue that. There was the pig butchering scam seizure on October 8th. There was the JP Morgan letter, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, once the price starts to fall, you know, people start stabling out. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Everyone believes their narrative. And the price miraculously bounces almost exactly at the 50% median. I stick with my thesis. I think this is a market maker driven. It's a reset of all leverage, all margin out of the system. And we trade up from here, like Mando says. We might test the bottom one more time, but I think we drag ourselves out of here. It's a whole new market.
Okay, let's get into more of the details as to exactly what happened, because you touched on a couple of little theories there, Marty. First of all, we'll go back to, we have the 82K, which is the mean, and 70% of all Bitcoin by value has last moved above 85K. So that's what some people call the center of gravity or home or whatever else. But that's an enormous incentive for deep pockets to support Bitcoin here. And we see that already with the ETF flows coming back. That's a good sign. But let's get into, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of weird theories, and I want you to score them as to which one is the most likely. Okay, this is going to be one of the weirdest DCAs we've ever done. First of all, JP Morgan comes out a couple of weeks ago. I shared this exact slide. They said the bottom is in at 91K. And they said it's going to chase gold and it's extremely undervalued. Now, I know there are different players at JP Morgan. Then JP Morgan debanks Jack Mallers, who's a guy who never comes off of CNBS all the time. And he's behind CEP, Strike, all those players. He's an OG young guy. I think he's like 31, 32 years of age. But he's been in Bitcoin basically with his dad since it began. And his dad is a high net worth individual who also has had private banking with JP Morgan for 30 years. And then the family just got debanked. Very strange, reminiscent of Choke Point 2.0, if you remember that back in the day. Then rumors, JP Morgan is basically not letting people have their stock back because they are shorting MicroStrategy heavily. They believe the easiest way to take Bitcoin down is to go for the jugular of Michael Saylor and choke him out. Because the action on MicroStrategy is very, very, very bizarre. And this explains some of that allegedly conspiracy theory. I'm just sharing stuff. This is from Max Kaiser, OG Bitcoiner. And he believes they are playing their usual games, which they've been playing since 1900s for a very long time. So think about that one. Then BlackRock is also in the mix. Now, BlackRock have a different angle. We know that Larry Fink, aka Finkster, is now the new interim chairman, I think, of the WEF. And what do they have planned? It's very, very bizarre. But BlackRock funnels Bitcoin into ETFs and builds institutional wrappers, concentrating coins in custody instead of individual self-custody. And there's been a big move from many OG Bitcoiners to move to the ETF model for safety. But they now control the plumbing. And they have their Aladdin machine that does auto allocations and tells people how much to put into Bitcoin, which is a huge amount of action. And then you've got the liquidity shocks that could force coins out of weak hands into BlackRock's hands. And many believe not only sovereigns, governments, but also some of these big TradFi shops are buying behind the scenes. They're buying the TWAP from different sources. But the story isn't even over yet. It's crazy. We've got the debanking stuff. We have U.S. conflict. This is also very interesting because the money center banks used to always work with the Fed to control money issuance. If the US goes down the path, the treasury of stablecoins and Bitcoin-backed stablecoins and SBRs and everything else, that reduces the power of these big shops, which is extremely, worrying for these players. And then the final point, and this is a lot, but these are the key players, like some of the battle lines that I see being drawn right now. You've got JP Morgan Chase, Federal Reserve, BlackRock. Everybody understands what Bitcoin is. Everybody's late. Everybody wants it. You got the Trump administration, U.S. Treasury officials. They want to build an SBR. And you got the fight over control over the money supply. And then you've got other things like the pig scam thing where a lot of people believe, sorry for rambling here, it's just so much I want you to all think about. When the U.S. said they're going to start building a strategic Bitcoin reserve without buying Bitcoin, but basically for seizing it from other players, that made the Chinese very nervous. And this has been going around for a long time. I've heard it from 3 different sources that the Chinese lost faith in Bitcoin because, and people like Jordi Visser and people like you, Marty, and others believe the Chinese felt Bitcoin was a great way to stash cash for a long time. Now that the US government is confiscating it, it's no longer safe. So they're the theories. What is directionally true or correct, or is it all complete BS? I'll go to you, Mando, first, because this ties into TradFi in a big way. It's wild. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, the ones around big institutional players causing this, like BlackRock or JP Morgan, I'm less convinced on. I can imagine right now, if you take a step back, that there is a war going on basically between China and the US for economic power. And I think China's decided that it's going to go behind gold. It still has like a hedge where Hong Kong, I think, is getting into Bitcoin. But you could say that one of the major reasons why gold and Bitcoin have diverged as much over the last 12 months could very easily be related to a Chinese policy of basically selling Bitcoin and buying gold. That would not surprise me. They're about 15% of the mining capacity right now. In the past, they've been much higher. I'm sure they have reserves which no one really knows about, and you could imagine that would be the case. And we've generally seen selling from OG style wallets, selling primarily out of Asia. That could be a reason. And I don't think we'll ever know if that was the main reason or not. But that divergence between gold and Bitcoin at a time, obviously, where the BRICS have been looking at different currencies, and we know that China's been powerlifting gold, as have other central banks. Maybe that makes more sense. I just kind of feel like the US financial institutions are all kind of behind Bitcoin. Like Trump wants it. I don't think this is good for BlackRock right now. JP Morgan, you could argue they've been a little bit bearish in the past, but right now BlackRock, I think, wanted Bitcoin to go higher, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. Marty, conspiracy theories. Tell us where, what, why these forces are in play. Where would you place most weight?
First of all, my initial thesis remains intact. So that's a good backdrop. And that is that I believe that there's no way out of the $37 trillion of debt without some coordinated, structured strategy like they did in the 30s with gold, where, you revalue an asset in order to get out of debt. And I believe that they've chosen Bitcoin and gold to do that again. So I believe 2025 is the accumulation phase. I believe JP Morgan is late to the game. They've now decided to get in, and they don't buy the top, just like BlackRock doesn't buy the top and forced the bear market of 2020. I think JP Morgan probably wanted to get in the 80s, and they do. They're very powerful. But I think at the end of the day, this is all about accumulating Bitcoin. And the government is very much involved. They've already implemented the policy, the executive orders for the SPR. And this will be probably 2026. There'll be a bond market crisis. And they'll announce the strategic Bitcoin reserve, and that they have a million Bitcoin. And then 8,133 tons of gold. And then they'll revalue them. Probably $1 million Bitcoin and 20,000 gold, something like that by 2027. And that's how they'll get out of debt. And they'll start issuing treasury bonds again based on a hard asset reserve. That to me is the master thesis. So if you understand that thesis, then these are all just tactical moves. It's an accumulation strategy by JP Morgan, by BlackRock, by the US government, by everyone involved, even China. Now the pig butchering narrative is extremely viable. And it just explains to me a lot of false selling. Clearly, we had false selling around October 10th. And the pig butchering thing is not necessarily China, although I have direct evidence that China is selling Bitcoin. The pig butchering thing is basically in Cambodia, Laos, and China, and other Asian areas, there was a massive scam ring where they do these romantic scams, where they basically entice a Western man with a fake woman, and then, extort ransoms and things out of them. And they used Bitcoin for many years. In fact, my father was targeted at one point, I remember very clearly. And they accumulated a lot of Bitcoin, 127,000 Bitcoin. Balubin was one of them. But there were rings of these groups. And the US went and seized that 127,000. Now, first of all, China believes that most of the victims of those scams were Chinese citizens, and so they're entitled to at least some of that. And that is an ongoing dispute, which I believe created a lot of background tension that we weren't really aware of. I did report on it actually, but it didn't get really picked up by the main.
Did it cause, like, it was very clear, a lot of the old mining pools out of China, they dumped a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of other high net worth people that stashed money away from the CCP or whatever dumped a lot.
James,
did they torpedo? This is reminiscent for me of what happened with the U.S. Treasuries with the invasion of Ukraine, where the U.S. basically confiscated.
The problem with these things is once the U.S. Department of Justice starts to legally seize, and they did it extremely fast through Hong Kong jurisdiction. Once they legally seized Lubin's 127,000 and added to their wallets, I mean, if you look on Arcam on the U.S. government, it's now 324,000. So they've added that 127,000 as if it's theirs. Once that happened, then all of the other scammers that were holding Bitcoin, they become very wary of that and they don't want to be seized. So they dump their Bitcoin. And the other, obviously, conspiracies, they try and hide it through ZCash. I mean, that could explain the ZCash pump as well, is trying to obfuscate ownership of these pig slaughterers through ZCash. So that's one of the drivers for selling. But then obviously the 50-week moving average, you know, the people that believe that once the technical traders, once they believe we crossed under that for, you know, that average, well, we're going into a bear market, they sell. And then you get a selling frenzy, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And, you know, we land up where we were, which is a capitulation event. But at the end of the day, I think this is normal to me. There's always these narratives. There's always these forced selling. The biggest point is we're in the macro bottom. There is no liquidity. You've been lied to. We've been in recession. We haven't printed new money since COVID. The Fed has literally burned their entire balance sheet down to zero with no intention really of indicating any relief. The only thing they've said is December 1st, the end of quantitative tightening, which means the end of selling off their balance sheet. They've also speculated they're going to move more into T-bills and not mortgage-backed securities, which ties in very cleanly with the stablecoin strategy, which ties into the original thesis. So I believe we're going into a metamorphic stage. And before you do that, the price has to come back to the median, which was 80,000, 83,800.
Yeah.
You want to be technical. And people should not panic, first of all. This is normal. Okay, we build up from here and we will go higher than before.
CTO,
everybody wants Bitcoin. Yeah. The whole thesis that people don't want Bitcoin is incorrect. They want it more than ever, but they're not going to play top prices.
Yeah. The macro backdrop is phenomenal. It has never been better in years with the rate cuts, more rate cuts coming, QT ending, global money printing, global deficits, the need for something hard beyond gold. And the other key point is for CTO, when gold does what it did over the last 18 months, that shows you, not that, oh, let's just go buy some gold. No, it shows you there are severe cracks in the monetary system. And we all know that Bitcoin is far superior gold, but it's not playing along. CTO, what do you make of all of this? Is it pigs? Is it the big banks? Is it BlackRock trying to own it all? Is it artificial suppression? The whole thing with MicroStrategy as well is kind of wild. Where do you see all of this playing? Because it's unprecedented.
Yeah, I feel many times people underestimate Asia. A lot of us here, for example, and everyone else talking, we tend to be Westerners, so we talk from a Western perspective. But there's a lot of people in Asia, guys, and they have a lot of money. And they like trading, gambling, and all that stuff. I think I had actually not, it was you who reported it, Marty. That's when I saw it. I mean, it's enormous, this Cambodian prince group and the pig butchering scam. So I didn't even know what it was. So pig butchering means like you fatten up the pig before you slaughter it so that there is more ham on the pig. So, and I mean, so 14 to 15 billion dollars. 127,200 Bitcoin they had collected. And that was only the part that they confiscated.
That's just one of them. There's many rings. Correct.
Exactly. this is a lot of money, guys, that they had managed to scam people of. That's a lot of scams. So now when hearing people got scammed here and there, okay, that actually we're talking, and I mean, this is just what they confiscated from one group. That was 15 billion. So probably the total is much bigger.
Oh yeah, that was just one of the linchpins.
They were doing this.
Just to kind of conclude on that. So go ahead, Martin.
CTO, just people misunderstand. This scamming was happening when Bitcoin was very cheap.
Yeah.
So people were paying, 20, 50 Bitcoin when it was still in the thousands, but now it's worth a lot of money. So
it is, yeah, exactly. And I mean, if we're looking just at the Bitcoin that the US government has confiscated, I don't know if I can share the screen here for 1 second. It's a lot of Bitcoin actually that has come from these different scams. Now I asked Grok here because I was too lazy to do my own table, but we're talking about like 500,000 Bitcoin confiscated in total. They don't have all of those because they've sold some of them. But so here was the 127,000 at the end, and that you see the rest here. So plus some smaller ones. So this adds up to 500,000 Bitcoin that has been seized. And if this was 127,000 in one group in Cambodia, guys, not disregarding Cambodia in any way, but that's just one country. There's
a
lot
very
of
small country too. It's a very small GDP country.
So I mean, how much of this? And then if that happened, like U.S. government comes in, I don't know how they seize the people, but I picture, the SWAT team is running in, they're seizing everything. What do the other guys do? I think exactly like you said, Marty. Perhaps they think that, those untraceable Bitcoin, perhaps they weren't so untraceable anymore. Maybe we should sell some of them. That could absolutely explain a lot of this selling.
No, absolutely. And the timeline, CTO, is just too coincidental. Let's just run through the timeline if we have a second.
Yeah.
October 8th was when the US court documents were unsealed for the first charge of Senzei. This is the Prince Group Holdings, which, by the way, is a Cambodian casino group. These are massive casino operators. Okay, so October 8th, those court documents were unsealed, and the initial asset freezing and charges of wire fraud and money laundering went out.
Oh, that's quite a coincidence. Just to remind everyone on the show, that's 2 days before the biggest liquidation event in crypto history.
Right. Then October 14th, the US and the UK together announced sanctions on 146 other individuals linked to the Prince Group, including the freezing of 19 London properties and more Bitcoin. Understand, this was an ongoing strategy between the US and UK. This is budget neutral acquisition of Bitcoin. That's what people need to focus on. These sovereign countries can't buy Bitcoin. They need to acquire it through budget neutral means. Seizure is the way they do it. China got their Bitcoin through seizure, and the US gets their Bitcoin through seizure, and the UK got their Bitcoin through seizure. This is just another leg in that arm. Then on October 30th, Singapore police seized over 150 million in assets. November 2nd, Cambodian authorities closed 4 casinos tied to the Prince Group amid this fraud investigation. It's a massive thing going on.
And there's human trafficking
US
too.
People have no idea about.
Yeah.
And it all happened around that 10th of October, which I believe pushed the price below the Benjamin Cowan level, which causes the self-fulfilling prophecy. People believe, oh, it's the bear market, so they sell. Oh, that people that bought on margin, all the DATs, they get margin called, they need to sell. And so you get the typical sell-off, which I believe was triggered by this Cambodian event, in my opinion.
Yeah. There was another guy, Tom Lee, and he's in a world of hurt now with his Bitmine and ETH. He's over $3.5 billion underwater. And that's a very big take it in the shorts over the last, 20 weeks or less. But he says he knows who triggered the October 10 crash. And it was all to do with the stablecoin. Again, yet another theory. Everybody has one. And the question is...
Well, I mean, they tie together, James, because remember, some other narratives that people need to understand. I've worked in exchanges, coding, okay, as an architect. These are synthetic order books. Binance, Coinbase. The order book is opaque. You can't see it. It's not blockchain. Crypto is decentralized, but the price of crypto is not. The price is held on synthetic order books. So when you do a buy, it doesn't immediately show in the price. Binance accumulates all buys, accumulates all sells, and then they do their own MEV, maximum extractable value. They can structure their buying and selling however they want to. That's why you see the TWAP buying, the TWAP selling. Okay, so when this heavy amount of actual sell ordering came in around October 8th to 10th from all of these various things, this has caused the glitch in Binance. I think that they actually broke their synthetic order book. So Tom Lee's actually not wrong, I don't believe. And Binance admitted to this, that they actually had a stablecoin depeg because of that selling volume on that day.
Well, this gets really deep. It's a good question. I'm going to spend hopefully the next 20 minutes. We're going to give time to the audience to really help address their questions. I'm not going to dictate an agenda because there's too many things on people's minds that they really want us to shine in on. The ZCash stuff, that was the Altseason of 2025. That thing went through. We had like Mert pumping it every single day. I was like, huh? Why? And we got a comment here from Gomi Man. People who are pushing ZCash are the scammers, the same that want the Bitcoin fork. Any truth to this? And I get the connective tissue between these pig groups out of China wanting to get out of Bitcoin because they're afraid of U.S. government seizure and they need to obfuscate the money and stick it into ZCash. It's a perfect fit. And that explains an awful lot. But Mando, what do you think, ZCash? Why the pump? Is it because of Chinese money being pumped into it to obfuscate their funds?
Maybe, but maybe that's a real reason for people to own Zcash at the same time. Like what we're seeing is governments getting way more involved in crypto, and Bitcoin doesn't have to just be like the dollar. And yet we're kind of getting a little bit closer to that with all the rails that it has with TradFi and the oversight from different regulatory bodies. So if it is due to that, then I don't think that's necessarily bearish for Zcash. Let me put it that way. I would say that you're actually identifying quite a real issue that's happening in crypto at the moment, which is a lot of money held, particularly by Bitcoin OGs, is perhaps off the books, so to speak. And Zcash may be an option to get around that. So I wouldn't say that like Zcash is necessarily a scam coin, but it is a privacy coin. And I think that narrative actually, as I've said before, I think it's only going to be stronger in a year's time. Like we've already been through what the UK and the EU are about to do in terms of reporting and ownership. You can be just a pretty normal actor and still want to own, have a bit more privacy around what you're doing. So
and we've seen governments arrest coders, developers behind privacy protocols, which is also very scary. And the governments want to know everything about you. I don't care which government you believe in or don't. They do not like their citizens having wealth that they do not know about because they want to tax you to death. CTO, any thoughts on this Zcash theory?
Yeah, I think I differ a little bit in opinion. I think that this Zcash momentum was more driven by, say, Naval, who is a very respected thought leader in the US, and other people starting talking about that we need some kind of privacy, and that the OG Bitcoiners don't really like that Wall Street it's kind of taking over Bitcoin, like right or wrong, but that was the narrative. I think that if the people really wanted to launder the money, I think there would have been better ways to do that, because, I mean, there's a lot of privacy solutions that have been used successfully by the criminals, and I would have guessed they would just stick to the same principles in that case, rather than bringing up like a new coin that hasn't really had so much going for it for many years. But who knows? I have no idea. I'm just speculating here. Yeah. So anyway, I saw those more as disconnected events. But you never know. You never know. They could be connected. But I think to sum up what I wanted to kind of get to before, I think that if we try to understand what triggered the event, I think it could be two things. I credit to Marty here. I didn't know about this before. I think it could be a bunch of huge scammers who panic sold because their buddies are getting their assets seized.
Correct.
And number two, what we talked about previously, like the 4-year cycle, self-fulfilling prophecy. Mando, when you went to Asia and you talked to some guys and they said that, yeah, 4 years is up, so I'm selling. And then I will repurchase lower. If people start doing that, of course, price goes down. So I think that those are two simple explanations. I don't know anything about these conspiracies with the banks and all that stuff. I feel that perhaps there's a simpler explanation. It's just that people sold for these reasons. And then when price starts going down, other people like myself see that, oh, trend is turning down here. You know, all the people listening to Benjamin Cohen and so, okay, let's, you know, trend is down, let's sell. Moving average, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we'll sell some more, and it continues down further. And then at some point, those winds shifts, the reasons for selling are drying up, and you know, momentum comes back and it starts going in the other direction. So, and then we, of course, we don't really know if it is scammer selling, 4-year cycle guys selling. We don't know how much they have left, but at some point they will be fed up selling, and then price starts going up again.
CTO, it's so interesting you say that about the simplest explanation. I think it's Occam's razor, because the simplest is always the most likely one, which could be the case. Let's talk about Tom Lee and some interesting stuff here with BitMine. Tom Lee was targeted. Tom Lee, I don't know how Tom Lee got tricked into going into Ethereum. We all know Joseph Lubin found the DAT, the treasury company, as a method by which to move some of his bags. And there was a huge hype cycle around treasuries. But boy, did it backfire spectacularly. And it's going to leave a bad... My big worry, Mando, is this could leave a bad taste in the mouth of Wall Street for crypto. After, you know, you got Tom Lee incessantly on CNBS saying $20,000 to $40,000 price target for ETH. Got a lot of people very excited. And they're doing their little math on what it would mean if they buy the stock and how much they're going to make, especially with a premium. And that all evaporated. What do you think? Is just bad timing? Was he tricked by Lubin, or did Lubin get his exit?
I mean, obviously he'd been speaking about Bitcoin for a while, and as far as I'm aware, like those are two competing DATs, who are both competing very early on. I think he just saw an opportunity there. Remember, like MicroStrategy's MNAV was the reason why all of this happened. And suddenly then this idea came out of finance that they could do this. No one that I spoke to in finance necessarily thought that they should trade at like some massive premium to MNAV. I think they just saw that as an opportunity to do this. And then it became, you know, everyone started piling into it. And the idea that VCs could sell at a discounted level was even more attractive for some of the VCs getting involved too. So it may leave a little bit of a bad taste. But I think it's more retail that got burnt on this rather than TradFi, like the belief that this was going to be another MicroStrategy, and it wasn't really. For here, like, I am surprised at how ETH is holding up versus Bitcoin and versus other L1s here, because this has been the ETH trade. Like, ETH went from 1,500 to 5K on the back of this, and yeah, it looks like Tom Lee bought some more last week, but he's down over $4 billion. Like, this is not a trade. Even if you think that he won't need to sell, like the DAT trade continuing for ETH, it seems like it's going to come to some form of an end. And we have some of the smaller DATs selling last week as well. So my gut is that will be an overhang for ETH for a long time now.
Yeah, it's interesting. The DATs that are selling, they're selling their whatever ETH to buy back their stock, which is a discounted NAV premium, which actually makes financial sense. But it's kind of interesting. And this brings up another question from Hudson the dog. Is this a great time to buy MicroStrategy? Question, yes or no. My personal take on this, I like the SAT accretion, but I don't like the fact, if it's true, and please tell me, I've got a conspiracy hat on here, the TradFi, the JP Morgans are going to war. And I have heard lots of anecdotal evidence that people that have large amounts of MicroStrategy can't get their hands on it because it's being used by TradFi to push the price down by shorting MicroStrategy. In addition, I think JP Morgan apparently, allegedly, accumulated over 1 million MicroStrategy shares over the last couple of weeks as well. So there's crazy stuff going on. Would it be a good time to buy MicroStrategy? The discount to NAV is about 10% right now, which normally happens at the bottom of the bear.
Is that simple, or is that the diluted MNAV?
That's the diluted version. So it is down. It is bad. And they made a big buy of 8,200 last week. Nothing
what was the lows during the bear market?
It fell to about, I think, 82%, or 18% discount to NAV. But that was also during a time when Bitcoin tanked to 15.5. Everybody was throwing in the towel on any liquidity they could get hands on, margin calls, etc. It was a dark time. So
yeah, I don't think MicroStrategy is going to default or anything bad is going to happen, but the stock just seems like, because he has to pay some form of ongoing cash flow for some of the prefs, right? And maybe not the converts, but for the prefs. Has there been clarity on where that is going to come from?
Yeah, so they can issue stock to pay that, or they can issue more preferreds to pay that. Right. And that's why people say, oh, it's a Ponzi, but it's not really, because his end game is to swap fiat for Bitcoin. And now he's doing it in multi-currencies, like in Europe and other places. So
I like the pref. That's where I'm at. Like, I think I prefer the pref to the common, just because of that exact situation where I think he may have to issue stock for the common.
Yeah.
To pay the interest.
Another quick question here from Krypton FT Drummer. People say no one's speaking about the theory that DATs are not being accepted for ETFs. So, a lot of people thought when the ETF launched in January 2024, nobody would want these proxies anymore. They have the ETF, but that truly wasn't the case. And now people are saying the same thing again. I think there's a different purpose. If you buy IBIT, you pay your 25 basis points in fees. If you buy MicroStrategy, whenever they buy, you get more sats per share. Just that kind of simple. Anyway, we shall see. Let me see. Is Tesla's on fire today? Their new 14.2 FSD is a game changer. I made a post earlier about this, on how it's going to completely ravage other car makers and it's going to make Teslas very desirable, and it's going to launch in Feb in the Netherlands. And once it launches in one country in Europe, it'll spread like wildfire. Is Tesla expensive?
Stocks feel really strong again today, right? Like they were down last week, but Mag 7 maybe it's really Google that's just like driving all of this, but it's remarkable that they continue to feel good, and Bitcoin's bouncing, but it's still underperforming.
Yeah, and the big news for why the market actually is popping is, let me see if I can share this. I'm terrible at. Do we show us an easy way of share screen? Boom, this. Is that showing? CME odds are now basically 80% of a rate cut in 16 days, which has the market very excited as well. So that's what's pumping a lot of these risk assets. I
think if we hold on to that thought for a little bit here, because I think I see a lot of people are in the comments they've been slaughtered here this year, while I think especially you, James, you have talked for such a long time to also cover the tech stocks like the Teslas, Nvidias, all the AI stocks. I've talked about boring commodities like gold and so on and so forth. Like, diversification, guys, is useful. Like, looking at times like this where Bitcoin has been slaughtered. Okay, but Tesla is up. The AI stocks have done fantastic this year. Gold as well. Like, diversification shields you a little bit from that. Like, instead of taking one big bet only, if you can find, for example, 3 bets that are all good, that is mathematically better, because the likelihood that some weird thing happened, that there is like a pig butchering scam in Cambodia, that now, if that was the cause, we don't know, but the likelihood that happens also on in Nvidia and on Elon Musk's factory floor in Tesla and in the gold market at the same time is much lower. So, like, mathematically, in each point of time, you take a lower risk of getting wrecked if you have some diversification. Of course, you can't diversify from one good thing into one good thing and two bad things. You need to find like three good things. But I think that's one learning that a lot of people can take with them from this. Like, try to not only trade altcoins, for example, because they might all crash at the same time. While if you diversify across, tech stocks, crypto, some commodities.
It's not even diversification. I think the way I look at things is you zoom out and you look at microcycles and you look. We know that the time to buy crypto is in the bear market. And then you just wait. And then you, whatever, take profits or do your thing. And then you look for other assets, other narratives that are very undervalued before they pop. And, we had great opportunities at Tesla at $106 and $200 and all the opportunities given to us by all the FUD was miraculous. Same thing with NVIDIA falling to $88. So every asset has its price. If you're patient enough and keep an eye on a number of things, just wait for them to fall into your traps and then allocate. So I believe in diversification, but very concentrated risks across just two narratives, and then rotation when possible between. I think that's the easy way. What do you think about that, Mando? I know you rotate a lot between cryptos, but I've got a tax situation, so it's not as easy for me to move money around.
Yeah, I generally, at least within crypto, I'm more just like a Bitcoin, and then I try to kind of just focus on the thing that's the hottest narrative at any one time. Because I find sometimes holding on to altcoin narratives, you can get caught up for months in underperforming narratives. So I'm normally pretty brutal about getting in and out of narratives as they become strong, which is why obviously I like pick up on ZCash, but then when it starts to turn, you kind of get out of it and you kind of wait. Right now, there hasn't really been one. It felt like last week maybe some of the perp platforms were going to be the strongest ones, but this week Hyperliquid dipped below 30. It's still hanging out just above there now. So right now there's no real one altcoin group which looks particularly strong. I think we're just really waiting for Bitcoin to kind of regain focus. But I do agree with what CTO was praising you for there. Like, if you had barbell of AI and crypto, you would have probably been okay for the last few months. If you just had crypto, then it's been a bit more painful.
Exactly. There's another interesting thing here regarding from 2JB. ZCash will be crushed by regulation. This was always my fear with privacy coins, because they'll never be accepted by traditional finance because of the governments are against them, and the TradFi folks don't want to promote things that the governments don't like. And then there could be a movement from, say, the European Central Bank or Lagarde or whatever that other lady is that controls Europe. They could say, hey, if you are in possession of ZCash, we're going to arrest you. I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility. We've heard some crazy things. CTO, what do you think of this regulation and the danger of privacy? And then Marty next.
Oh, definitely. There is definitely conflict here. And I think I mentioned it earlier. It was actually the same with HTTPS, like SSL. Marty, I'm sure you remember, it was illegal to have more than so and so many bits, 42 bits, and then in special circumstances, 64 bits and so on. So like the US was suing people for using HTTPS basically in the beginning. And then later everyone realized that actually that's kind of dumb. We kind of need encryption and so on and so forth. But I don't think that understanding hasn't come yet. I think that the only way that encryption could really come in, that's if it comes into the layer 1 protocol. If like Vitalik and everyone, Solana start building it into the layer 1 as a normal thing in the main protocols, then it perhaps could sneak through. I think today, when it's specific coins that are so easy to ban, I think it is a problem, definitely. Then, exactly like you say, some governments will say that using Monero or ZCash is illegal, full stop. They don't need to go out and ban Ethereum or Solana or something like that. That would be seem more kind of dumb. So I think that I do think that might happen over time. Like, it actually becomes a basic feature in the layer 1s. And then I think it will be very difficult to ban it.
There's another interesting theory and I came up with this when I looked at the altcoins over the last 12 months, all across the board. They're down over 40%. And that basically signifies 2025 was a bear market for altcoins. People were still hoping and praying for Altseason. It never happened. Now, since we had a bear market for exactly a year for alts, and that's how long a bear market normally lasts, and I always double the 20% as a bear market in equities, 40% is a bear market across the board in crypto. What about this wild theory? Marty, you ready? 2026 becomes an Altseason.
I've got a lot of input on all the topics that we've just covered.
Yeah. What about Altseason in 2026, or at least altcoins, some of them rebounding hard in 2026? Marty, possible or not?
Okay, first of all, nothing has changed on the blockchain. In fact, the blockchain, the software has become stronger and more regulated than ever. So the value proposition for crypto has never been higher. The liquidity outlook and landscape has never been better. There's more liquidity coming than ever before. So if you're on the left-hand side, put the actual software and the liquidity, it's never been better. This is the time to buy. On the right side, you've got this regulatory banking turf war between TradFi and the decentralization of finance. Clearly, Trump is in the decentralization of finance. He hates the banks as much as anybody. And so you're going to have to deal with this turf war. And I always say, they'll fight like dogs. And this is how they fight. So I think it's a buying opportunity. Most of these altcoins, especially the ones that are regulated, are highly undervalued. If you look at the strategy of the US, which is to create a Bitcoin treasury stablecoin economy, a digitized parallel financial system, then you should invest now in the assets, regulated assets that participate in that parallel system. Do not invest in anything else. It is speculative. And that's my opinion. But then the important part to me is that this event that we're talking about with the pig butchering thing, I want people to understand what this means. These are criminals that all acquired Bitcoin illegally in 2020, 2019, 2021. As far as I'm concerned, I don't mind when criminals are forced to leave crypto. We don't want criminals in crypto. And the US doesn't want criminals in crypto. So this only happened because the US seized one criminal's crypto and all the other criminals dumped it on the open market because they were afraid that their assets would get seized, as well as running it through ZCash, which, by the way, ZCash is just a Bitcoin fork from 2016. It has nothing really special other than it has the optional ability to use ZK snarks, which are zero knowledge, succinct, non-interactive arguments of knowledge. Bitcoin can do that. Bitcoin can implement that. But we don't want that. We don't want Bitcoin to be the home of criminals, which it has been before from the Silk Road. We want it to be hygienic. And this is all a process of cleaning that out. The US will go after all criminals. So is the UK, to try and get that supply back into the system and out of the hands of these people, because they'll dump at any time. Okay, they're not holders on the long term. They're criminals. So I don't mind this. I see this as all bullish as far as I'm concerned. Nothing that has happened to me is not bullish. The MicroStrategy getting reclassified, the 50% holdings, a digital thing, that whole story, the Rand Nooner thesis, has legs. But I think all of these narratives have some legs, and they all culminate into the self-fulfilling prophecy. You as an investor need to take a deep breath. The fundamentals have not changed. In fact, they've only improved. All that's changed is the price has dropped. This is the time to enter. This is historically the time to enter.
Yeah, so this somebody asked for the Altseason. This is the total 3, which excludes stablecoins, Bitcoin, and ETH, and it's down 40% over the last year, which is tragic and horrific. So, Mando, do you
can just add to that? So it's even worse, actually. Like the total 2, which is all the altcoins market cap excluding Bitcoin, it's now it's the same price as 4.5 years ago, or it's even lower than in May 2021.
Yeah, and think about this, CTO. Sorry, I've got this comment on your face. Think about this. How many new coins are there in the space?
Exactly.
Since then?
Yeah. So
it's
don't
just-
hold on to some old dead coin hoping that it will come back. It's not a good probability.
Oh, I heard Cardano's doing well.
Oh,
What about-
damn, that was scary. Hey, they forked the chain.
They got forked. Stick a fork in it. You know, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, but the sentiment's better than last week. So I'm very glad to the moderators in the chat here and everybody for coming. Don't forget links below for everybody. I want my kidney back. The comments are hilarious. What does 2026 look like? Like literally, I'll go back to the question I asked previously, Mando, for you. We had a bear market for alts. CTO just backed it up. It's been brutal for a year, literally since just right after the US election. Do you believe, like as Marty says, if you put all the stuff together, build a pie, the liquidity's coming, the technology's better, the adoption's up. There are 5 chains on Solana make more money than ETH as an L1 itself. What do you see happening in 2026? And by the way, the Sol ETFs, and there's now 4 or 5 of them, every single day there's positive inflows. Not a lot, $20 to $50 million every day, but it still adds up. Where do you see things going in 2026? If we have a bottom,
I mean, the
Bitcoin
easy
at
answer is
80K.
to say higher, but because obviously I was wrong on this divergence with liquidity and gold before, it's difficult to just hitch all your ideas on the back of that. So for now, like I'm still just in kind of in wait and see mode. Like I think of what I said at the start, I think we're going to hopefully form some sort of consolidation here around 80, and hopefully that holds. And then longer term, as Marty and you have also described, like there is a reason why Bitcoin is related to these sort of things. You know, like it's not just like we've plucked up some random correlation. This is related to money printing and related to debasement and also just fiscal instability and insecurity. So I just think Bitcoin is always going to have Bitcoin is always going to have a very strong narrative just because that has not changed. In fact, it's just getting even better, as in getting even worse. Doge was disbanded today, I saw. So like the idea that we're going to have fiscal responsibility doesn't seem like it's going to be there. And I can only imagine that we're going to see more monetary easing as well next year, with the Fed starting to reduce rates. And I think Japan actually just approved that 150 billion stimulus that we were talking about last week. So none of this is changing, which just means that Bitcoin will always have a very, very strong bid for it.
Well, get this, Mando. The US is adding $1 trillion of debt every 80 days now. Every city in Germany is bankrupt, and all the deficits across Europe, France, Italy, etc., are through the roof. So, and China is printing money like crazy. Japan are just fired up the money printers like crazy. Fiat is going to the moon, i.e. it's going to zero, but the printing is going to the moon. So global liquidity is literally going to explode in 2026. That's why the macro backdrop has never been better. And Marty, you said that too.
Mm-hmm.
And the rate cuts, third rate cuts coming in 16 days.
Plus the Clarity
chance.
Act. I mean, the market structure, it's a mind-blowing change. It basically takes all uncertainty out of the crypto market. The estimates are $1 trillion will come in. So I think everything is lined up for a sensational 2026. The only issues, obviously, are the Trump Supreme Court ruling, which is definitely a black cloud over the markets right now. And that is that the Supreme Court, you know, in their ruling on November 19th, said that it's illegal. The Democrats said it's illegal for Trump to apply tariffs, and he's taken in, $100 billion so far. And so that's in the Supreme Court right now, and there should be a ruling in December. They could stretch it out to June next year, and there's a 180-day dispute window, which means that's a lot of uncertainty as well, which we've got to get. But if that goes Trump's way, I expect a massive pump on all markets. And if it goes the other way, you should expect, 10 to 15% haircut on that.
Give us 10 seconds, Marty, on why the market structure bill and the Clarity bill are extremely bullish.
The market structure and Clarity bill are the defining moment for crypto. It actually makes crypto real. Basically, the most important things were the Genius Act. Remember, there's a dual parallel strategy to get out of debt, not only to make the monetary system more efficient, to return to hard money collateralization, to fix the broken treasury market, but it's to digitize and modernize the financial system to create money velocity and global capital markets. So the first step was to digitize the dollar, and they did that. They passed the Genius Act. They then went to regulate the networks. They picked and regulate the networks to house the digital dollar. That's Solana and Ethereum right now. And the Clarity Act is the next one. And that really is solidifying this parallel financial system, because what it does is it goes through and implements all of the checks and balances on these exchanges. No more manipulation, no more commingling of funds, no more in-house market
making. What'll Binance and Wintermute do?
No, okay. Commingling of funds. Everything FTX did, Binance is doing right now. Commingling of funds, in-house market making against customers, all of this stuff. It's literally a liquidity extraction. Now, if you ask me, okay, Binance brings the market down and then they take the market up. They're also responsible for making this asset class. So they extract liquidity, they buy the assets up for the next leg up. This is the playbook. Nothing has changed.
That's why they say CZ is one of the richest men on the planet without fully disclosing it. Final point. We've gone over an hour. Mando's got to get back to unpacking and his new, stuff like that. Thank you, Mando, for being here. Real quick, Mando. This is another thing that we just touch on briefly. The reverse yen carry trade supposed to hit on the 16th of December. What does this mean for us?
I actually think this is one of the only real macro worries right now. It's just that that the yen is weakening and that we get an unwinding of bond yields in China, and like the actual stimulus in Japan, the actual stimulus that they just announced as well is actually to fight inflation. So it's a strange scenario going on right there. Japan is not as internationally integrated as perhaps some might expect. Like there's a lot of domestic ownership of a lot of these assets, but if that were to spiral, I do think it would lead to some form of
gray swan
contagion, let's say. But we've been talking about this for a year and a half, and nothing has really. This is starting to happen, but it's not caused an explosion yet. So
I mean, the only thing we do see is the 10-year Japanese bond yield is at 1.78, which is the same. It's actually a higher level than it was when the Bitcoin white paper and the GFC happened.
It's very high. And it's only going higher in my opinion.
Happening in the charts, you can see it.
Or
you can follow that with JP10Y on TradingView.
Exactly. Well, gentlemen, we've gone over an hour. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank, once again, links below for CTO Larsson, Marty Party, Mando and his minutes and everything else. Follow these legends. Thank you all, everybody. Markets are, as Amanda said, the Mag 7 are exploding higher, doing very well. Gold is up $32, which is big. And Bitcoin has added nearly $7,000 in 5 days. I don't know. We need to get above that 91K to know we're out of the woods. That will be the trend reversal level. Any final thoughts, CTO, from you of all this craziness happening in the world?
I mean, my strategy is very clear. If there is like a V-shaped recovery, it's pretty difficult to catch. I hope, like Mando said, that there will be some consolidation and we can gradually start seeing support building, and that there's a good chance to identify that and ride the next wave wherever it starts from. I mean, it could be that this was the bottom and it just runs back. It could also be that it continues for a longer time, but at some point I'm certain that it will turn around. Like digital money on the internet, the whole concept of Bitcoin, that is not going away. We've all said here, I mean, if anything, everything is looking worse than it did when Bitcoin was created. The financial responsibility of nations is not there. So we will probably see a lot of inflation, a lot of those kind of problems with the fiat currency. Gold and Bitcoin was intended to be the solution for that, and like Bitcoin being the modern solution to that, and that's not going away. And then there will be speculation, and if we're lucky, sometimes we can ride it, and that's what I'm going to try to do. I will try to not predict so much, but react to what actually happens.
Exactly. Wait for the confirmation before pulling the triggers. I want to thank everybody once again. And by the way, Bitcoin is down 20% for the month of November. Worst November in nearly 8 years. So it's been historic.
Yeah, it's been a rough October, November.
Yeah.
But I think December we start looking up.
Yeah. Maybe, you know, we have 6 days left in November. Who knows what can happen? You got people like Tom Lee once again. Hyper bullish. He moved his $200,000 target. I said I would eat a shoe live on YouTube if we hit $200,000 before year end. He moved that out to the end of January, and I will still commit to eating a shoe by the end of January if we hit 200,000. I'll gladly eat a shoe, and maybe we can all do it together. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great week. Good luck with the move and everything else, and see you all next week. Thanks all. Thanks to the mods in chat too.
Bye, guys.
Bye.